I think it's time we have a talk about Manchester United and their start to the season. We're 5 games in, 6 if you want to count that Grimsby horror show. But the question is, has the start to the season been as awful as we think it's been? Has it actually been not great, but has there been an overreaction about it? Because if we look at the underlying numbers, if we look at the underlying stats, we look at where we are compared to the likes of Chelsea and teams that are expected to be in the top 4, United aren't far off. Or is it just simply too early to tell? Sunderland and Brentford are 2 big games, 2 must-win games for Ruben Amorim, where 6 out of 6 points could be the start of something good. 1, 2, or 0 out of 6 points could spell the end. In today's video, we're going to talk about Manchester United, talk about something that I don't think anybody's noticing about Manchester United. We will cover other news stories. We will talk about Xerxes, the latest on his potential departure. We'll talk about this Maino Camavinga swap deal news going about, and Dean Henderson made comments on, well, not Dean Henderson making comments, but how Dean Henderson would feel about a Manchester United return. But I do feel like things aren't great at Manchester United. Things are not good. And I think, the game versus Grimsby was a disgrace. Tactically, it was a disgrace. Anana was a disgrace. I thought the second half versus Burnley, the lack of tactics to adapt to that was concerning. The second half versus Fulham, there was areas of concern. But the Chelsea game was decent. The Manchester City game was a disgrace tactically. But the Chelsea game was decent. The Arsenal game was decent. The first half versus Burnley was fantastic. The first half versus Fulham was very good. There's been good signs, there's been bad signs. It's not all been bad. Are we a little bit better than we think, or better than the media think? Because if we look at Manchester United, they had the hardest 5 fixtures in the Premier League out of any team this season, because we played 3 of last season's top 4 in the opening 5 games. We played 3 of the top 4 in the opening 5 games. And no club has a higher XG or has taken more shots than Manchester United this season. We've underperformed that XG, we've been very attacking, and our underlying numbers put us around the top 4 despite being 11th in the Premier League right now. Now, I'm going to be totally honest. I've watched Manchester United. We've had some really good spells in games. I think the first 20 minutes of every game we've been brilliant, but we failed to sustain that over the 90. Is it due to player mentality? Is it due to tactics? The opposition adapt when they figure out what Amorim's trying to do, and Amorim doesn't always have an answer for that. Is it due to the midfield being overrun? I think it's a mix of all 3. I think it's a mix of we don't have players that are good enough to sustain over 90. We don't in second halves. When you're 2-0 down, why do you not have answers? Why can't you go to a back 4 when you're chasing a 2-goal lead? But we keep hearing all this talk about Manchester United as if we are awful, and we haven't been great. Don't get me wrong. I've been negative about us because we haven't been great. I expect more. I'm not happy. But the way that we're spoken about compared to the likes of Chelsea is crazy, because we're 1 point behind Chelsea. We're 1 point behind Chelsea. We've played harder games, yet Chelsea is spoken about in this really good light, and Man United spoken about in this really bad light. And this is what I mean by is nobody noticing this about United. Like, we're not great, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to pretend that we're good, but we're still on the same amount of points as Man City, and we're 1 point behind Chelsea. And I feel like the way, and I think it's because last season and what Ruben Amorim did last season, and that was 15th lose to Spurs in the final. I think a lot of it is purely based off the fact that, well, Maresca was good last season. Pep's Pep. So, there's that confidence that Chelsea and City, this is a blip and they'll be fine this season. Whereas Manchester United, we don't have that confidence that Amorim's going to succeed this season, because we've not seen Amorim do well. In a 31-game sample size, he's rock bottom for since he's come in the door at Manchester United for points per game. The statistics and the underlying numbers around Amorim are awful. So I understand that. And I'm not Amorim's biggest fan. I want him to succeed, but I'm not the biggest fan of his tactics. I'm not the biggest fan of his approach. But I'm saying this as a general perspective of, I feel like nobody's noticing it. Like, nobody's noticing the fact that we are 1 point behind Chelsea. We are equal in points at Manchester City. We've had the hardest games. I feel like they're too focused on Grimsby, or too focused on, well, last season was atrocious, which is true, but this season is this season. And look, I'm not going to act like we're good this season. I'm not going to act like we're going to have a good season. What I am trying to say, and the point I'm trying to make, is we're being spoken about as if we are 10, 12 positions behind Chelsea, and we're not. Or 10, 12 positions behind Manchester City. and we're not. We're 1 point behind Chelsea. We're equal in points with Manchester City. We've had the hardest games. We've created the highest XG. We've had injuries to Cunha. We've had injuries to Mount. We don't have a midfielder in the door. Hopefully we get one in January. I think, the big test really is these 2 games against Brentford and Sunderland. Because 5 games is a small sample size. And I've always said this. I've been quite negative about Amorim this season. But I said you can't sack a manager after 4 games. It's 5 games now. I said, as much as I'm not fully convinced with Ruben Amorim because he didn't show anything last season, we need at least a 10-game sample size in the Premier League. And I've said that. I can't be Amorim out until he's had a 10-game sample size in the Premier League. And I think these 2 games are really important because these are must-win games. We've got 1 game a week. We've got players back from injury. There's no excuses. These are must-win games. And look, it's the Premier League. No game is easy. But we won the Chelsea game. This is Amorim. If Amorim beats Brentford, this is the first time he's achieved back-to-back wins in the Premier League. Which is crazy to think that we got there. And I honestly believe that some of it is mentality, some of it's tactics, some of it's players. But I honestly believe if we can beat Brentford and beat Sunderland and get 3 wins in a row, that could give us the momentum we need. Because let's say we get 6 points in our next 2 games, well, we go up to 13 points, and let's say Arsenal only win one of the next 2 games, we could be equal with second place. You just never know. I'm not saying that will be the case. But we've now got 2 easy games, 2 must-win games. 4 points not good enough, 6 points. We need 6 points out of 6 for these next 2 games. They're easy games, they're must-win games. I mean, no game is easy. But I think if we win these next 2 games, could it change everything? Could it give United the psychological boost? Because Ruben Amorim doesn't seem to think his system's at fault in the slightest. Ruben Amorim seems to think it's, psychological. Ruben Amorim is convinced the problem is the mentality of his team and not the system. He's convinced it's the team. I'm convinced it's both. I don't think it's you change Ruben Amorim and everything gets miraculously better. And I don't think it's you change this player for that player and everything gets miraculously better. I think it's a bit of both. I think it's we need a few more quality players in the team. We've got a few players that lack the mentality. But Ruben Amorim's system could be more adaptable because it's not particularly working with the current crop of players that we have. And he's not going to get any new players till January. So rather than doing the same thing over and over again, why doesn't he adapt until he gets the players that he wants in January and he can go back to what he believes works when he's maybe got the players to do that works? But potentially, if we win 2 games in a row, it could change a lot. It could change the confidence. Because I think confidence is a big thing. I think when we're confident, we play well. And I think when we don't feel that pressure, we play well. Anyway, I wanted to talk about a few other news stories in today's video while I was doing it, because this was meant to be a 10-minute roundup, but I wanted to be more positive about Manchester United and have a conversation, because I feel like the media isn't speaking about us as if we're equal in points with City and 1 point behind Chelsea. Fabrizio Romano confirmed yesterday, and you may have known this if you watched my video yesterday, that United and Xerxes apparently rejected approaches from Juventus, Italy and Napoli in the summer. Amorim values Xerxes highly because of his versatility. He can play as a 9, he can play as a 10, he can add assists, he can add goals. But Xerxes and Manchester United both rejected a lot of top Italian clubs. There's a lot of interest in Joshua Xerxes. There could be in January if he doesn't get a whole lot of minutes because he's only just come back from injury. It's one to watch, but it's interesting to know that Amorim doesn't want Xerxes to go and Xerxes doesn't want to go. And I like Xerxes, so good signs there. I was reading One Football and a piece by the People's Person about, Maino Camavinga, and it was said that United are expected to sign a new midfielder in 2026. Elliot Anderson, Camavinga, Adam Wharton, Baleba, 2 of those, please. Reports suggest they could revisit a move for Eduardo Camavinga. Xabi Alonso favours other midfielders at Real Madrid right now, but Camavinga, when he's back, will probably be liked. Madrid do like Kobbie Mainoo. A possible Mainoo-Camavinga swap's been floated, though Camavinga's willingness to join remains uncertain. I'd love Camavinga at United, but I'd love Camavinga at United to play with Mainoo, not to be a Mainoo replacement. I want Mainoo to stay. I would want Camavinga to come in or Baleba to come in and then Adam Wharton to come in. And I think that would be really good if we could get 2 top midfielders in. But United like Camavinga and they will have a look at Camavinga. I don't know if Camavinga will come. I don't know if Real Madrid will sell him cheaply. And I don't want Kobbie Mainoo to be part of that deal. I'd like him to come and play alongside Kobbie Mainoo. And I know he's had injury issues, but I am a big fan of Camavinga. So if Man United want to do something mad and bring in Camavinga, that's great. We will be bringing in a midfielder. That could be Baleba, that could be Wharton, that could be Elliot Anderson, that could be Camavinga, that could be none of those players. We will be bringing in a midfielder, probably 2 midfielders in 2026. But I do hope that it's not at Kobbie's expense. And then last but not least, Dean Henderson, obviously Manchester United player, we did him dirty, probably should have had more opportunities. But according to Luckhouse, Dean Henderson told Confidence he would never return to Manchester United. Not that this is really relevant news, but Samuel Luckhouse does have good connections to Dean Henderson and his camp, and we know that Dean Henderson was very unhappy in his final years at Manchester United. We didn't give him the minutes that maybe he deserved, and considering the money we spent on Onana when we could have just kept Dean Henderson, you can't fully blame him. But listen, people, thank you for watching today's video. See you next time. Bye.